Hello, and welcome to the Alter Ego, the podcast which goes beyond neurotypical. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about masking and unmasking my ADHD and autism, as well as explaining why there are issues with masks for those who are neurodiverse and the consequences and impact it can have on overall well-being. Getting a diagnosis this year for me was like finding that missing puzzle piece, that big eureka light bulb moment. It's allowed me to understand why I've always felt different in social situations, navigating the workplace, maintaining relationships, and generally just being able to express myself. My AUDHD is not a label. It's a beneficial diagnosis which helps me to understand my way of thinking, how I view the world, as well as allowing me to understand why I face certain challenges and experience things in unique ways. I will always remember the day I was diagnosed. My doctor was saddened that it had taken 28 years for me to be treated appropriately by the healthcare system. The structures in place to support me earlier on in life really did fail me. Places like school and the healthcare system had let me down in that aspect. I was prescribed medication the same day that I was diagnosed, and taking medication for the first time when you have severe ADHD is emotional and overwhelming. I never knew that being medicated with correct medication would finally have an impact on that noise in my head. So for those listening who do have ADHD, some of you might understand that we have this constant noise in our head, which is frustrating at times. It's constant. My medication lowers it now, so that's really beneficial. So for the first time in my whole life, since being medicated, that noise started to slow down. I remember the first time I took my medication, it was like total silence. It was like instant, within an hour, just total silence. And I felt so relieved to finally have a quieter mind. I could finally concentrate on what people were saying to me, despite all the noise in my head. Because before being medicated, I couldn't concentrate on. It's like having 1,000,001 thoughts going constantly in your mind all the time, and then you have the sensory input of what's going on around you, and then somebody trying to talk to you, give you verbal instructions. It's just really distracting. So being medicated has supported that. It's alleviated that. It's eased that a lot for me, which is a really positive thing. Despite being on medication and learning about myself every day in my unmasking journey, I'm still battling with the neurotypical alter ego I had created to fit in, masking my ADHD, but it's a journey that I'm excited to be going on. So in this episode, obviously I'm going to talk about masking and unmasking, but for those listening, you might not understand those terms, so I am going to be providing definitions, my understanding, my definitions of them. The issue of masking is it can have a profound and often overlooked and ongoing effect on an individual's well-being. The effort of masking can lead to a sense of internal conflict. This is what I refer to as my alter ego. So my alter ego to society will look neurotypical, and there's a continuous conflict between being my authentic self and fitting in to society. It creates a tension which is hard to navigate. I find I still mask every day to navigate neurotypical spaces. The process of masking itself requires a significant amount of mental and emotional energy, which contributes to feelings of anxiety, exhaustion, and burnout. Masking can also hinder being accurately diagnosed and getting timely intervention, as individuals, like myself, know all too well. The long-term consequences of masking can include a compromised sense of self, decreased self-esteem, and challenges with building meaningful connections. It is vital that as a society we start to talk more about unmasking and the issues surrounding masking to create a more inclusive and understanding environment which encourages and supports neurodiversity. This will allow individuals to embrace their unique strengths and navigate the world authentically. I'd noticed prior to my diagnosis a consequence of masking for most of my life would be having cycles of burnout. I now understand this is referred to as the boom and bust cycle. This means I overexert myself, reach fatigue, crash hard into burnout, and then have to recharge, which I find really frustrating. So the cycle will then repeat, often leading to deeper burnout cycles. So every time it happens, I'll recharge, recoup, and then the cycle happens again. It just restarts. And every time that happens, the burnout will be harder every time. I now understand that this can be alleviated if I listen to and honour my needs rather than pushing through, which I often do because I'm masking. So I'm learning that because of my ADHD and my autism, I have a set amount of energy or capacity for so many tasks which I need to monitor to function properly. This is referred to as pacing systems. One of my favourite pacing systems is referred to as the spoon theory. So the spoon theory means that I have a set number of spoons for the day which I use more quickly, unless I utilise them. So just for an example, my spoons for the day or the week, if I work all week and then attend events in the evening or at the weekend, which I generally do both, or engage with more social things outside of working as well, I have to monitor the energy I use. I have to monitor the energy I use, although I can be overwhelmed and exhausted by all of this and get major sensory overload from events. I'm learning how to cope better before or after such events. So monitoring my energy can include making time either side to unwind, nap, use my weighted blanket or weighted teddy. His name's Kevin. He's a koala. He's really cool. Or I'll sit in an unlit or dimly lit room. This essentially helps me process before an event or after an event. It sort of just maintains my spoons, helps balance everything out. So I'd spoken about what masking is, sort of allowed you to understand a definition and the consequences that occur because of masking, including the boom and bust cycle and how I cope with it in terms of managing my symptoms and providing strategies and coping mechanisms. I'd like to provide an example of what masking can look like for somebody who's neurodiverse, for those that don't quite understand how we show up when we're masking. I'm masking. I might say yes to lots of events, which I know that eventually I can't really go to. And that's because I feel almost compelled to agree to do things, even though I know that it's not always beneficial. So I had quite a busy sort of last few months because I'd accepted to continue to socialise a lot more than I'd normally do, which is fine. Had some really lovely events with people, which is really lovely. In doing so, it's made me really poorly again. So I'm now in my recharge zone. I'm back to the boom and bust cycle, which is I'm really, really exhausted. So masking means that I turn up, I put a smile on my face every single day, which I don't really want to do because sometimes my normal unmasked face means that I'm not always smiling. And it doesn't mean that I'm not happy. It doesn't mean that I'm not enjoying myself. It just means that I don't need to process my expressions in the same way as everybody else. I don't need to constantly paint a smile on my face to show that I'm happy, if that makes sense. Masking for me also means mirroring behaviour. So for a lot of people, I might seem quite extroverted and well able to communicate. Typically, I'm mirroring somebody. I'm very quickly analysing what they're saying, how they're saying it, the body language they're using, which I then mirror back to them. Some people might assume they have lots in common with me, but a lot of the time you're seeing a masked version of me. I'm mirroring back your own behaviour, which, isn't ideal. Masking could also mean that I take on too much. So I'd agree, I can do that, no problem. Of course, no worries, But then on reflection, I think, gosh, why did I accept that? Because I know I can't do it. I'm tired. I don't want to do that. It's hard. So hard. It's hard to even describe because it just happens so naturally because I've done it for so long. So being able to describe how I'm masking for me is actually quite difficult to explain at the moment because it's almost, I've created 28 years of Zoe that doesn't want to show up anymore. I want to show up as the version that I need to be. And I think that's quite difficult in the transition at the minute, especially with my loved ones. So they're also going on this journey with me. They sort of understood me as a version pre-diagnosis. And so now that I'm diagnosed, I'm unmasking and unraveling. And it doesn't mean that because of my diagnosis, I'm starting to act more autistic or act more like I have ADHD. I'm just finally able to act in the way that my brain wants to behave, and needs to behave in order to function, which is massively different. Masking for me can also be conversations, for example. I usually talk in statements, so I can't do small talk, but I have to because that's what everybody else does. So somebody could say, "Oh, morning, Zoe, how are you?" And I would often, before recognizing, say, "Yeah, morning, I'm okay." And that would be it. I didn't realize that in conversations, like small talk, you actually have to ask questions back, which is really hard for me. In a nutshell, I often mask every single day because I'm still learning how to unmask and be my authentic self. Obviously, it's going to take time. I've built structures and systems which are associated with a neurotypical way of living. And so, in order to function better, I'm learning strategies and ways to cope to better facilitate my needs, which is really important. So, it is a journey. Unmasking for me takes many forms. It means not always looking someone in the eye when I talk to them, being able to make notes when someone is giving me verbal instructions, being able to vocalize sounds when stimming. So, sometimes when I need to stim vocally, I will make for example, boop, 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 or I might go la 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 la. Blah, blah. I'm going off topic. I'm sorry. I'm really trying to focus today. My ADHD is quite bad. I am really trying to get. So being able to vocalize sounds when stimming. I'm quite fidgety as well. I don't really like to sit down often, but when I do, I'd often spin in an office chair, for example. I quite like the idea of being able to stand at a desk. I don't have a standing desk, but I do often sometimes stand up and will continue to be responding to like an email, for example, in my admin time, standing up because that's what I need to do in order to process. Even now, for example, I cannot stop moving. I'm constantly spinning in my chair, which might pick up on the microphone. Can I edit it out? Probably not. So that's fine. Unmasking can also look like being able to use my headphones or my earplugs. Obviously won't refer to the brand name, but I have some fantastic little earplugs which help level out the sensory sound and reduce the sensory overload. Unmasking also is about me being able to be transparent about my needs and the spaces I navigate. So in the workplace, with the relationships I have, my loved ones, I'm very transparent about my needs now. Being able to unmask in society is a crucial step towards building a more inclusive and compassionate society. Embracing the diverse ways in which an individual's brain functions fosters acceptance and understanding. Allowing neurodiverse individuals to be their authentic selves will not only create environments which are inclusive, it will allow the individual to truly thrive. As a neurodiverse individual, I have many unique strengths which I can bring to different environments when I'm able to be my authentic self. This can include my ability to hyperfocus, my ability to recognize patterns, really useful in my job, being creative or inventive. This podcast, for example. I created this concept for a podcast, including its cover art, episode outlines, and where it will be published in the space of about 15 hours, as well as learning what RSS feeds are, how to record, use the correct equipment, and how to use editing software, which is still a work in progress. But that just shows how inventive and creative I can be, as well as using the ability to hyperfocus, which allows me to learn something new really, really quickly. It's a very cool skill. If we continue as a society to dismantle stereotypes and challenge societal expectations, which are typically neurotypical, instead promoting a shift in perspective that recognises the unique perspectives and strengths that neurodivergent individuals bring to the table. Being able to unmask in society is not just about embracing differences, it is about harnessing the collective power of diverse minds to foster creativity, innovation, and a richer tapestry of human experience. Although this journey has been difficult, it has also shown me the unique strengths I have because of how my brain works. Though there is chaos, there is also creativity in my scattered thoughts. There is innovation. I'm learning to find the silver lining and turning challenges I face on this adventure into opportunities. As I continue to unmask, I will continue to learn strategies that work whilst building a life that aligns with my unique mind. I'm excited to share this journey with you. I hope it develops understanding, sparks conversations, and helps build on supportive communities. Next week's episode will focus on the festive period. It seems timely and appropriate to highlight how the festivities can bring a set of challenges for the neurodiverse community. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Please do let me know your thoughts on my episodes through the Alter Ego platforms on TikTok and Instagram, which I have linked in the description of this episode. You've been listening to your girl Zoe and her podcast, The Alter Ego, the podcast which aims to go beyond neurotypical